as was said, my name's Taylor Cupp. I'm with my partner in crime here, Michal Wojtak. We're from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're with Mortenson Construction. We're a builder of many things. We're mostly known right now for our sports stadiums. Michal's working right now in the Atlanta Braves ballpark here locally. His role on that project is to support technology on the project and support what we call virtual design and construction. So with that, we virtually plan out and execute our buildings out in advance of physically executing them so that it goes a lot more flawlessly. Myself, I used to do what Michal does. I've transitioned into what's called a technologist role at Mortenson. So I'm overseeing and helping employ technology on our projects for people like Michal, and also at headquarters and in different aspects of our business. So with that said, something that's kind of important to note is we're not just builders of buildings too. We do a lot of solar work. We build wind turbines. So we've got kind of a diverse set of markets that we're serving on a technological standpoint. Advance here. There we go. So what we're going to talk to you about today is creating the future state of construction in the AEC industry. We've got a pretty short history, but a history that's been pretty in-depth with virtual reality. We're going to talk a little bit today about our explorations in augmented reality in past years.
I think the fundamental thing that makes Mortenson unique is this passionate drive for continuous improvement and innovation. There are three fundamental revolutions that are happening in our industry right now. One is the integration of design, supplier, and subcontractor. Secondly, the adaptation of manufacturing techniques, of being able to prefabricate sub-assemblies off-site, deliver them just in time, and making that construction site a place of final assembly. And thirdly, using technology tools that really enable us to effectively implement the change of both integration and manufacturing techniques.
Taking the ideas that came from the ground up, from the project teams that wanted a better solution. Integrated Delivery Advancement Team, or the IDAT, is our group within the company that pulls together our team members in a think tank to really look at the future of the industry, new tools, new approaches that we could use to improve project outcomes and to improve the customer experience. And now with sustainable focus, we're focused on what is the impact of the facility in the place we're building it, and what is the total footprint of that building over a 50-year window.
By bringing technology and sustainability together, Mortenson stands at the forefront of the engineering and construction industry's revolution.
So at the front end of that video is David Mortenson that was speaking. He's the chairman of our company. It's a family-owned company. And when you hear someone that's at the very top of the organization talk about technology like that, it really resonates through our organization. So it's safe to say that we really embrace it. And along with some of our friends in the construction world that are here from Rogers O'Brien that are going to talk in a minute, we kind of see ourselves and them as some of the leaders in this space. And it's an industry that in the past, and most people see as, they're kind of plagued with waste and not using technology to our best advantage. So I'll kick it over to Michal here to talk about, get you into our timeline with augmented and virtual reality.
So we started looking at the augmented reality around 2007. We had a couple experiments with a couple of the vendors in what we call the virtual flashlight. The idea was to remove the use of the toll stations and layout. Technology wasn't necessarily there yet, but it's improving very fast. But we recognized a couple other aspects like virtual reality, and in 2011 we finally got the chance to work with a customer who had the cave system on their campus. It's at Penn State University, and we first explored the use of the virtual reality on design reviews, and we had great results out of it.
So as we were exploring that, what we found out really quickly, and I'm sure a lot of other people have that have explored it, virtual reality is way easier than augmented reality. And that kind of sprung into the next project on here in 2012, which was a job that I supported locally in Fargo, North Dakota, believe it or not. And that's the, I jumped ahead there. 2012 was the University of Minnesota Residence Hall, close to Fargo, but it was really our first time where we got to make use of a full-scale virtual reality environment. So a cave where you're fixed to a box and you get to move around with a controller or something. This one had a 100-foot by 100-foot area where you could walk around. But again, same thing applies. It was a lot easier because we weren't having to pull in the entire context like we really need to do with augmented reality. Jump ahead one more year to 2013. This was the job that I was on in Fargo. 1 million square foot hospital, about $500 million project. About the time that we really wanted to start using virtual reality on this project, the Oculus Rift first development kit came out. We got our hands on it, and we heard from our customer, hey, we really want to make use of this, but getting doctors and nurses to the University of Minnesota or to Wisconsin to take a look at it, a pretty expensive proposition, just because you're taking them away from work. So what we did was deployed that locally and gave it a run, and they loved it and saw a lot of benefit out of it.
So in 2014, we started exploring more deeply the use of the head-mounted displays for virtual reality. And if you think about that virtual reality, that our initial test using the cave was very difficult. You had to schedule it very timely with our customers, with our partners, and you had to deliver them somehow to the facility that quite often was in the outskirts of the country, in the hard-to-get locations. And suddenly, the head-mounted displays were like this wearable cave, right? You were able to bring it to the customer and get basically the same experience, immerse them into virtual environments, and eliminate this need for travel and coordination. Not to mention the cost, right? The cost of the cave is millions of dollars. Head-mounted display, we are talking a few $1,000s to deploy that kind of a technology on your project. So I mentioned in 2007, we've been experimenting with augmented reality. And the concept was that we want to eliminate the use of a tape on our projects. We want to make sure that we have the model-based construction. That's what's happening. That is what allowing our construction to actually happening in the time frame that we have these days. So we started working with a couple vendors to develop what we called at the time virtual flashlight. It was the technology that would allow you to project on the actual surfaces of the construction augmented information. So for example, you can see a couple like this diffuser location. So idea was that rather than pre-cutting openings in a drywall, we would be able to just install the drywall as a complete system, and then using the flashlight project where we should cut out the drywall for the systems that are inside of the wall. So very quickly, we have discovered that virtual reality has an enormous impact on our project, and in the various aspects that we haven't really initially even think about that. Initial idea was to eliminate the roadblocks in a design decision-making process, because it's a very challenging situation. Our customers very often don't talk the language that we speak. The two-dimensional construction documents don't necessarily mean anything to, for example, coach of the sports team, right? And immersing this person in a virtual reality gives them perspective of understanding what the design is, what they can expect really. But very quickly we realized that we can support that with the funding, providing additional sources of funds for construction, additional design reviews. Savings are coming from the fact that we can very early review the design concepts, and we can find where the customers not necessarily be super happy with what was designed, or might have some ideas that they want to support it differently. We had a couple examples where customer walking through the virtual environment said that this window sill is too high. Why don't we lower it so we can see, for example, the community rink on the other side? And would we have to do it after the construction was done? we would have to demolish a lot of work that was already in place, occur a lot of rework and additional costs. So we can save money using that technology. Also, on the operations side, we can immerse the future operators of the facility to provide them with the training, for example, on how to operate mechanical systems on the facility, or even implement them during the coordination so they can add their comments into location of some of the systems, mechanics. Sales, we had a great success in providing the support to sales by providing the future tenants or suite holders the view of how their suites might look like when the construction is done, so they can faster sell their premium spaces, especially on the sports facilities. And recruiting, we had a great success also in recruiting, where Pegula Ice Arena was being built. That was a totally new sports program for the Penn State University. They didn't have the hockey program of that scale at this time, so they had to recruit the new coaches, new athletes, and all we had at the time was a hole in the ground. So it was very successful in recruiting the new coaches and athletes to be able to show them how their new facility will look like when it's going to be built.
So fortunately for Michal and I, oftentimes our customer isn't the customer he just talked about. It's these guys. It's our internal customer. And I say fortunately because as we start to look at these newer technologies, this has kind of been a common theme here, getting out with those guys, walking in their shoes, understanding what can help them technologically is a lot easier because it's our internal customer. They're within our organization. The other thing I was going to note here that this is way less about VR. It's way less about the shiny thing. It's about getting these guys the information they need. Our job is to prop these guys up, support them, keep them moving, and make sure that construction goes off without a hitch. Because the second things slow down, it gets pretty expensive for us. So where we see the real value proposition here is in an age-old technology, though. You saw a couple of them out with the vendors, taking and really using the hard hat potentially as the attachment method. But a quick history on the hard hat, because I think it's kind of important here to see how it's progressed. Going back to 1898, that was when the first hard hat was invented. That was for caves. Someone identified a problem. We had workers in caves doing mining. Rocks were falling on their head, they were getting hurt, and it was happening very frequently. Fast forward a few years to 1931, the first time that hard hats were mandated on a project, and they said, everyone's going to wear hard hats. That was on the Golden Gate Bridge, and what was the other one? And on the Hoover Dam. And with that, what they created was an aluminum hard hat, evolved a little bit from the previous leather hard hat. They added rain gutters, they added a visor for the sun, and it became a little bit more about function than just about safety. Fast forwarding to today, in my opinion, it hasn't evolved very far. We've gone to ABS plastics, it's gotten a lot lighter, it's probably more comfortable to wear, but it hasn't really moved forward. What we're really excited about is some of the things we're seeing on this front now. This example that's up here is the daiquiri hard hat, but as we look at it, we really are saying, our hard hat we're wearing out there on the projects now, we're almost to a point where we can really start to call that yesterday, and the hope is we're moving to something more advanced where this hard hat can start to be the housing for a lot of these wearables that we're talking about. This is a promotional video from that actual company. This is the daiquiri hard hat. It has a lot of sensors that they're kind of supporting, potentially embedding in it. It's getting close to being there. But what really piques our interest is some of the use cases around it. A lot of them are similar to what we've seen today. Quick story I want to tell that kind of goes along with this and goes along with putting some sensors in hard hats. I had the project I was on in Fargo, we had an individual go down with a heart attack. So when that happened, it really got me thinking, what if we could have put some sort of a device in that hard hat that would have started to monitor his vitals? What if we would have maybe picked up that the day before? I think that could have potentially made him safer at work than what he is at home. And that's really what we're after. We want to send our guys home every day in far better shape, or in the same shape at a minimum, than they came to work that day. We have a tough challenge, though. When we show the workers something like this, this is some of the feedback we get. And what you see with a hard hat is it's a sense of pride, really, decorated with stickers. Some of those stickers might be safety certifications. A lot of times they have a color on the top of their hard hat that might indicate what trade they're with, could indicate what company they're with. So when we start to show them something that looks like the Daiquiri hard hat, it becomes a pretty tough proposition to say, get rid of this thing that's your sense of pride and put on this new high-tech thing. So with that said, when we really start to focus on our core competencies as a company, being safety, expertise, communication, and information, that's where we really start to think about, maybe it makes a little more sense to circle back on that hard hat. Because I'd argue, when has the hard hat really been a fashionable item anyway? It's about safety, right? So if we can make you more safe with some of these new technologies, why wouldn't we?
So the wearables present very unique opportunities for us. First and foremost, safety. It's not only the hard hat that is potentially making the worker safer, but also how they are, for example, removing the roadblocks that create the safety hazards today. We have been using construction documents on the site in a paper form for ages. And in the recent few years, we transferred only to the electronic documents, being on the devices like iPads and other tablets. But what it creates, it's creating this certainly hazard, because people are walking on a project, right, with their heads down, don't paying attention to the surrounding. So eliminating that and being able to present using the wearable technology the information that they need without eliminating their awareness of the environment, or maybe even supplementing them with the additional information. For example, are they walking into the area that might be dangerous for them? We quite often have taped out areas or areas that are more hazardous and only certain people can walk into on a project, and it's constantly changing environment. So being able to provide this additional live feedback to our workers might mean difference between going home safe and being injured. Additional information. We have so many documentation that is changing constantly. Our projects are a little bit unlike the factory where we are building the same car for a million times. Every single project we build is basically a prototype. We don't have 10 of those already. Every single stadium is different. Every single hospital is different. So it's a constantly evolving information that we are getting delivered on a sometimes day before or even hours before we actually put work in place. So being able to constantly provide them with the real information that is the right information is invaluable. And expertise, maybe we have somebody like it was presented just in a presentation before us, supporting our workers also might help them. So a couple current other technologies that we are finding are very quickly trending in our industry is 3D printing, generative design and optimization. Using in the past, design was evolving in a more of an expertise kind of a way, where the engineer or architect would develop maybe few iteration of a design and propose them to the customer. Now we have the tools that allows us to create like thousands of options and select the ones that are best for the project. And in line with the machine learning and automation, something like IBM Watson, they can probably optimize it to the level that we would not even think about as humans, allowing analyze maybe millions of options and select the one that's really, really different than what we would originally think of. Reality capture is another topic that is very highly thought about. But the wearables present this kind of a sense of embedding all unique information and supplementing our workers into some of a super worker, right? So this is a very unique opportunity for us, and we are very closely looking on the technologies that are emerging. We have seen on the floor over here, and I've been a couple weeks ago in San Francisco on the AWE, Augmented Reality Expo, which is very also integral to this whole aspect. This is something that we are very closely monitoring and looking into implementing very near future.
What really excites us about the wearables piece is it's kind of that one opportunity to turn the workers into the sensors. And they're the ones moving around the site. They're the ones doing a lot of things. So it's an interesting concept that until recently I hadn't really thought about. What if they're really becoming the sensors? As we approach this, though, what we're trying to do and what we try and do as a company is with any piece of technology is really tackle the business problem first. And I think Todd would agree with this. As a industry, we've got a huge problem with a labor shortage. I think it's a common problem with a lot of industries. But a recent study that was done by FMI started to dig into this and really glean some results that we think technologies like this can maybe help us solve by making us more efficient. What they're finding, though, is that we're doing a pretty poor job of succession planning. We've got our execs, we've got our project managers. We're pretty well equipped to support our projects with those types of individuals. It's the field labor where we're really lacking, and we're not bringing new people in to support the core of our business, which is building buildings. Another thing, the numbers down on the bottom, which are a little hard to read here, but the numbers down on the bottom is better performance. But the title of this one is the top 3 development delivery methods for trade craft workers. So what this is portraying is that as you get towards more types of technological solutions, that's drawing these trade and craft workers in. The days of, the kid that's out back beating with a hammer are kind of going away. It's kids buried in iPads. So we're recognizing that and thinking that, the more we can bring tech into our industry that we've been deprived of for a long time, the more it can maybe help try and bring some of these new people in. SmartVid, one of the vendors out here, I was talking with them as we were here. What they're really finding and what their product is built around is that exact thing. People don't read, or kids don't read anymore. The younger generation doesn't read anymore. They Google things, search things, and find information that way. So what happens when you start to capture job sites and make them searchable in that manner? And that's kind of what they're tackling and what they're after.
So use of technology like Wearable is not going to come to construction site all by itself. It is convergence of multiple technologies that has to be there together to make the project successful. For us, at the forefront is the virtual design and construction. We are already building everything using the models, building it virtually first in a computer, finding all the issues and problems first, and going into field with better knowledge about our projects and resolution to all the issues that we are finding. Sensor technologies, being able to monitor the condition on a project, being able to be aware of the location where the user of the wearable technology is very important. Reality capture, being able to recognize based on the maybe photographic criteria of where you are. Being able to scan that environment and maybe remodel it using just the photos is also helping in implementation. Devices like the Google Tango project where just by using the few cameras and infrared sensors, you're able to analyze the movement of the camera, allow you to overlay using augmented reality, the model that we have created earlier over the actual physical conditions that you are seeing. And all those things are converging to finally being able to use the wearables in a more useful way. The projects like Project Tango are really growing very fast. The technology is improving, and we are expecting that probably in the next year, we're going to have some actual products that we're going to be able to use on the construction projects in a very meaningful way. So a couple other technologies that we are looking at is supplementing our workers using exoskeletons, for example. Making them stronger, less tired, doing the repetitive work, Autonomous vehicles. A lot of talks about the Google autonomous cars, but it's not just Google cars. It's not just public transportation. It's also being able to, for example, deliver the material to the job site using autonomous trucks in a very highly precise timing, especially in the congested cities like San Francisco or New York or Chicago. It's paramount to deliver material to site right where you need it, because you don't have the place to store it. The real estate is really valuable. Hearables, being able to communicate with people that you maybe don't share the common language with. We are having a lot of workers with Hispanic language roots, and they don't always talk in the English language, and yet you have to communicate with them. And we are now having the technologies that are able to translate it directly in your ear. And I don't know how about you, but I feel like it's a bubblefish kind of a thing, right? You know that stuff. So equipment monitoring. We are having a ton of equipment on the projects. On any given project, we can have hundreds of different moving machines, and being able to recognize where those machines are, how we are utilizing them. Are we utilizing them to the most optimum level to remove the waste of the overcrowding of our site? We quite often have problems where there is too many machines, but we have to share them between the different trades, and we don't have the knowledge. Now being able to monitor where those machines are and how they are utilized, we're probably going to be able to optimize a little bit better on how many of those machines we're going to need on the projects. And environmental monitoring, being able to recognize that, for example, worker is entering into the area that has the high level of silica, and warn him about that, and maybe remind him, hey, you need to have a proper protection gear if you want to go and work in this environment. So those are the items that are really getting a lot of traction right now.
So as we started to look into augmented reality, for our people and for ourselves, we wanted to kind of start to paint the vision of it. But jumping feet first into augmented reality is we found to be tough and a pretty expensive thing. We've kind of tested it, but as a company, one of our mottos or one of our taglines is that we're building what's next. So what we've done is we created a quick video here that will show you that kind of paints the picture of what augmented reality is for us as a construction worker. So moving beyond what we showed before with the augmented flashlight, how can we get rid of the tape measure? How can we throw the tape measure out the window and no longer have people making mistakes with tape measure, spending time measuring things? We know this is probably the furthest reach for augmented reality, but putting the location of something directly in someone's line of sight also gets into providing information in an augmented way. This is one where we're probably pretty much there, and we can do this pretty easily based on some of the things we've seen. Pulling from a lot of our databases of information, doing things like crew information, providing a superintendent with the certifications on a worker to make sure they're in the right spot, make sure they're not kind of out of bounds, not in a location they're supposed to be, and also maybe even providing things like supplemental work instruction to our workers for things like equipment, or maybe getting into providing how to install something, how to do something. This example shows it pulling up like a PDF document, which I've learned here is kind of a no-no. You don't want to do that. But what if we take that and use some of our virtual modeling and do that directly in place instead of in the form of a PDF document?
And the technology will improve those PDF documents. You will actually have the high-resolution wearables where you will be able to clearly see what is on those documents, and that actually might be useful at some point. The reality is that we are supplementing the people in the field with the knowledge, but right now it's a little bit more like a kind of a Google search, right? You have this temporary knowledge and you can find all the information you need. Maybe at some day we're going to have this little bit more downloadable memory and provide this knowledge in a little bit different way, similar to, can we play that video? Suddenly,
I know Kung Fu.
Maybe he knows something different, not just
Show
Kung Fu.
me.
So one day.
Go ahead. Yeah, in wrapping up, that's what we've got. Again, Taylor Cupp, Michal, Wojtak. We're with Mortenson Construction. The message we kind of want to get across here is that we're not figuring this stuff out on our own. We're happy to have vendors here like the vendors that are here. It's awesome that Jeffrey and BrainXchange put something like this on. So really, the main message we want to get across, this was Michal's idea, is that we want you. We need help. As a construction industry, we know we've got a little ways to go, but things like this get us even more excited about it.
Yeah, we typically don't have huge R&D resources, so we are always working with somebody else helping us resolve all the challenges that we are finding.
Thank you.
Thank you.